Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Everybody, welcome back to the Parent Porch Podcast. I am Dom, the Uncaped Mama, and one of the leaders here at Parent Porch, and super excited to have you back for this episode with Ivory Duncan from Embracing Neuro-Diversity. Before we jump into our amazing conversation that I'm really excited about, I probably say that every episode, but we have such great guests. I really am excited about this one. I want to introduce you to our sponsor. So we have been loving Ep8. My son has autism, and one of his favorite snacks is popcorn, and I wasn't sure if he was going to like Ep8. Loves it. Okay, they are sponsoring this podcast, and we really appreciate them as a sponsor. It makes popcorn making easy. It's fresh. It's not coming from a bag, which I love. There are different flavors. Obviously, he likes all the butter flavors. It makes movie night or just a regular snack day super fun. So make sure you check the link in our bio to learn more about Ep8. Get the kit from them because it comes with a bunch of different flavors that you can try. We really love them all. I think it's worth a shot, and then you'll find your favorites, and that's what you can order every month. So everything from sweet to savory and just plain butter. So again, thank you Ep8 for sponsoring this podcast where we are talking about parenting and motherhood and neurodiversity and how we can support parents and children that are neurodiverse. So, Ivory, thank you for joining me today. I'm going to kick it over to you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about Embracing Neuro-Diversity, where people can find you on socials, and anything else that you want to share.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me here. I'm excited to have this conversation and engage, and hopefully it's fruitful for the parents. My name is Ivory. I am the founder of Embracing Neuro-Diversity, which I'll talk about in a minute. But first, I am a mom of an 8-year-old boy who is on the autism spectrum. I am also an educator. I've been an educator for over 15 years now, and a former school leader. I spent most of my time in Chicago, and I have rooted myself most of my career in education and equity work, diversity, equity, and inclusion work. Even prior to having my son, I've worked with neurodiverse children and their families. But then when I had my own son and realized he was on the autism spectrum at 4, I embarked upon a journey of learning how to be a mother of a neurodiverse child, which is different than being an educator of children who are neurodiverse.
Yeah.
And so I, learned really quickly that in supporting him, I also needed support as a parent. I needed to learn how to unpack and understand this emotionally because social dynamics change when your child shows up differently in the world. And so while I had all these years of experience being an educator and being an advocate for equity and inclusivity, facilitating to hundreds of adults around what it looks like to support children who are different, I had to really walk the talk when I had my own child. When it hits home, you really have to show up in the rhetoric that you speak. And so I got a coach, and she was able to help me unpack some of my mindsets around what it meant for me, to help me think through my identity, and to really forge forward in a way that creates space for myself and my son to be on this journey in the most healthy way. But one of the things that stood out with working with the coach was that she was not an autism mom, or she wasn't a mom of a child who is neurodiverse in general. And I remember thinking in working with her that this would be even more impactful if I had a coach who knew my experience, because there are things that you really don't want to say to those who don't know your experience, because they already have preconceived notions about our children. So that's where, embracing neurodiversity came from. And I was like, why don't I create something? I have all of these years of experience working with parents, and now I'm a parent of a child who is differently. If I don't see it out there, why don't I create it? And so I'll stop there because I imagine you'll have multiple questions about it, but that's where embracing neurodiversity came from.
Love it. And where can we find you on social media?
Yes, Embracing Neuro-Diversity, pretty much everywhere on social media, my website also. You can Google it, a bunch of sites will pop up with that name.
Perfect. Perfect. I'm like, I want people to know exactly where they can find you right now. But like, as we jump into the conversation, so thank you for that. I have a son who's about to turn 4 who was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder almost exactly 2 years ago. It was right before he turned 2. Actually, yeah, it was early October of 2023. And non-speaking, sensory processing disorder, ADHD. I mean, neurodiverse, right? But very brilliant. Not even but, and very brilliant. And I think everybody on the spectrum, just brilliant. Also, any type of neurodiversity, it's your brain works differently. I've got ADHD and anxiety, a little bit. I'm somewhere on the spectrum of a previous psychiatrist told me. And so just seeing the world differently, interacting with this planet differently. And you're right. I think when you shared a little bit of your story about how you came to this, it's, when you're looking for support, you want somebody to, they may not understand exactly what you're going through, but you want them to be familiar. Like, there are things that are unspoken that I don't have to explain or backtrack or shift around what I'm saying when I'm talking to another parent of a child who has autism. And so I think that's spot on. And I love that you took that and said, okay, I wish I had this. How do I make this available? Because I imagine I'm not the only person. So
literally it. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's talk about your journey as a mom, having a child with autism. So what are some of the early challenges and then moments of clarity that shaped your perspective as you started down this journey?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think about that a lot because obviously hindsight is 2020, but much like your experience, Dom, when my son, I love that your son, it sounds like he received his diagnosis relatively early, which is uncommon for a lot of especially Black boys.
Yep.
And so I always say my son was diagnosed at 4 because I want to highlight that is actually late and not preferred. But it answers your question in terms of my journey. I'm a single mom now, but I started out my journey. My son's father and I, we wanted a child, and we had our child, and everything was. I had the smooth pregnancy. Everything was fine. A little bit of complications during the birthing process, but nothing that would be, honestly, I had to say it, uncommon for a lot of women who enter the maternal space, especially if you're a woman of color. So no red flags in the beginning. Khalil also had a significant speech. My son's name is Khalil. I don't know if I mentioned that, but he had a speech that also was not speaking by 2. He obviously had clear signs of having ADHD. But with my first child, I was not around. I had not been around a lot of like toddlers or 0 to 18 throughout my upbringing, so I didn't see the signs.
Yeah.
I also, as an educator, have always worked with high schoolers. So I engaged with young people from like age 14 to 18. So again, I had no like real signs. And so when I would take him to his appointments, his like regular like checkup appointments, I remember around 1.5, 2, and I, mentioned to the doctor, like his speech is not really where I would think it should be. He would say like some things, maybe like mama, dad, but that was it. And so he was like, get maybe it's because he's the only child, maybe you should look into speech therapy. And so he never mention that, I see signs of autism, or you should like look into getting an evaluation. She said get him into speech therapy because he's the only child. So that is what I did. And he was in speech therapy for about 6 months. And this, I'll say this too, because I want parents to know to be mindful of like the biases that even practitioners have. But even the therapist, she was like, he's like you mentioned before, Dom, he's very smart. She literally said to me, and I have the report to this day, I don't see any signs of autism, but he was resistant and he had some behavioral things come up in his therapy. And she actually told me she thinks that myself and his dad should be more disciplinarian towards him because, again, he's the only child. She thought that we were not being more. I'm being nice when I say she felt like but you get where I'm going with that. So she suggested that we be a little bit more strict with him. And said she didn't see any signs of autism. So got him into pre-K, and his pre-K teacher was the one that was like, I think you should get him evaluated, because at this point, again, his speech is delayed. He's very active. But when I got him around other kids his age, he wasn't socializing, he wasn't engaging, he did not want to play with other kids. So that was the glaring sign. And so she was like, you should get him evaluated. So we got him on the list. It was in Chicago, a year of waiting, and evaluation happened, and that same day, the pediatrician was like, yeah, he's autistic. But by that point, I will also say this, if parents are wondering, even I would say between like 2.5 up until he finally got the diagnosis, I had a feeling. Even when the practitioners and the speech therapist told me she did not see the signs, I had a feeling. And I remember I started watching YouTube videos of other families who had kids who were autistic to see if they had similar signs, which is a red flag. It's an amateur move, because we also know every kid shows up differently. There are some similarities, but autism doesn't have a particular look.
Right.
But that was my only way of trying to get answers. So anyway, once we got his diagnosis, I got on the journey of like getting the services. But that has been my journey, and it has been, I started out even before I gave birth to Khalil, because I'm so rooted in education, I had all these dreams around like, he's going to read by the time he's 2. Our baby shower was called Baby Genius, because I wanted him to be like the most intelligent little boy in the world, which he is. And he's autistic. But I had to have to shift everything and go on the journey with him, and remove all the milestones that I wanted him to have, and just kind of be on the journey with him. So that is my journey so far.
Yeah, a lot of that resonates with me. I know that, like, I will reiterate what you said, is that like early diagnosis helps with early interventions, and it just buys your child more time to get the support that they need. And doubling down on, you will know. I remember saying something happened overnight. Like, he was like this October, whatever day it was, or it was like September. He was like this end of September after that doctor appointment. And 2 days later, he was like this, and that didn't change. Like, we had the regressive, like, where he was sort of, there were still some milestones he had never met, which I'm like, okay, let me just pay attention to that, right? He's never made eye contact with anyone. He does not turn when it's a sound that he enjoys. And there was like one other thing where I'm like, okay. But that's just coming from, the guidelines that the CDC had, and then me telling myself, you got to stop comparing your child. Because I was comparing him to other kids who were born either right before him, or there was another child from some folks I know on Facebook born the exact same day. And I'm like, wow, he's talking and he's reading. And, like, there's all these things. And my son was playing with toys inappropriately, not making eye contact, not responding to his name, not turning to certain sounds. And I'm like, something happened here. And I need to know. My pediatrician was similar to yours. Some kids, it just happens, later in life or whatever. And I said, I would still like him evaluated. If you're not going to do it, I'll go somewhere that will. Now, we have an excellent pediatrician. I don't intend to change them, but I do think they take such a holistic and natural approach. They don't want to assume. And I'm like, I'm not asking you to assume. I'm asking you to give the evaluation, right? So I can know what's going on.
Yeah.
And so went and got that, and we got the diagnosis. And I mean, he's in all the therapy, speech and feeding, and seeing a psychotherapist now to like help, and all of those things. And I just really resonate with your journey. We are just now getting ready to connect with the local school district and figure out what that process looks like. But it is a journey, and I think you really talked about this mindset piece of, the baby shower was like Baby Genius, and we know children on the spectrum and with neurodivergence are brilliant.
Yes.
They need extra supports. I always say, I think my son thinks that we are like so easily entertained and amused that he's like, I don't understand these humans. Like, I don't understand why everybody's so excited. I don't understand why everybody's greeting everybody all the time. I don't understand why they want to high five me, hug. Like, the look on his face is like, again, right? You can just see it. Like, I'm like, he doesn't talk, but he communicates very well with those eyes and those eyebrows. And I'm like, I'm looking at him and I'm like, yeah, you think we're all nuts.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. You think we're crazy?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. In Mom's Week, I really do believe with our babies, a little semi-verbal, but it's a lot of things he does not say. And when we're in spaces with other people, I feel like moms, we know what our babies are thinking. We just know.
You
So
just
like,
know. You just know. You see his little face and his eyes going, and you're like, yeah, I know. Yeah, I know.
yeah,
I just love that you turned the story into support. And so, like, what inspired you? I know you shared a little bit of it, like, in the intro, but, like, what was the moment outside of coaching, or what, like, take us back to the moment in coaching that said, yeah, I need to go create an organization to support
right.
other parents. Like, what, take us back to that.
I think it's also like even being prior to that, prior to Khalil, prior to being a mom, prior to I have I'm like a fighter. I have a fighting spirit. Like I can't if someone tells me that I'm unable to do something, I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna do everything in my power to like prove them wrong.
Yeah.
Someone tells me my son is unable to do something, I'm going to do everything in my power. And it's not about proving others wrong, but it is, for me, it's about living beyond the expectation that other people have. And that's
Yes.
always been my story. So even with Khalil and his learning differences, I wasn't, I didn't have like, to your point, I also, think that I have not been like, officially diagnosed with anything, but I definitely feel like I showed up in the world differently too as a young girl. When I look back, I'm watching my son has taught me a lot because I'm like, I remember doing these little quirky things myself. But I still was able to navigate the world and function independently. And but I do remember I had a lot of challenges, not with learning, but with like environmentally. I grew up in an
Yes.
environment that had a lot of barriers for me and people who looked like me. I went to a school that had a lot of barriers for me, and I had to learn how to navigate that. And I learned that despite whether it's a learning difference or an external societal barrier, you gotta have fight in you in order to move in this world, especially if you come from a marginalized group. And you still can succeed, and not because I was able to. And so I kind of took that and was like, also, I realized Khalil, he may learn differently and he may not learn at the pace as his peers, but he knows how to learn. And
Yes.
as long as he knows how to learn, that's all I need. And so we're just going to go on this journey. So going back to answer your question, I've just always been a fighter, especially when I feel like someone is doubting myself or my son's ability. But also because of the environment I grew up in, a low income environment, filled with a lot of trauma, I became fiercely passionate about advocating for those that are most vulnerable in our society, right? Which is why I got into education. So it's always been in me, truly. And sometimes I wish it wasn't, because sometimes I'm like, I just want to mind my business and raise. But it's just like I can't not fight. Especially with the knowledge and tools that I have. So really naturally, I'm just a fighter. And I'm, thankfully I've been able to get educated in a way that a lot of parents who have children who are autistic have not. And so I feel a responsibility. I have this skill set. So let me be a conduit for parents who don't feel they have the fight right now or don't have the knowledge. And I've been a part of these systems and school systems as well. So let me be the in-between person. So it's sort of all of those things, to be honest with you. And yeah, and I have an entrepreneurial spirit as well. Like outside of neurodiversity, I have other businesses. So it's all of those things.
I love that. I am similar. Definitely a fighter.
Yeah.
My grandma used to tell me stories about, and my mom, like about how I was really young, 2, 3 years old, and I was thinking about equity. Like I wasn't using the word equity, but I would be asking these questions like, why are we doing this? Or like I would get in trouble in school because I was helping somebody. Like the teacher wasn't helping them. They needed help. I understood it. So I'm helping. Now I wasn't super social, but for me, like I saw a need. So I would get in trouble for talking, but it wasn't the like, how people are like, everybody who got in trouble for talking, like as a child at school, what do you do now? Right. I was like talking because I needed to explain to you because no one was helping you. I was being a little advocate, right? So it was like almost like I was birthed into advocacy. And so that I totally get. Also worked in education. And I love that, you just like turn something that you do naturally, right? Things you learn, things you've been exposed to, and so let me use that to advocate, and help the least of these. Especially parents navigating it. You just going through it and having the emotions and the feelings and then saying, okay, I'm going to use that to fuel me doesn't come as easy to everyone. There is a grief, right? I went through a period of, is this my fault? And so I'm running back all through pregnancy. I did have complications with my son from the beginning. I have a genetic disorder, and when probably at conception triggered a porphyria attack, I'm in the hospital for 11 days. I'm really sick. I'm getting medicine. I can't eat, blah, 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 right? I find out 2 weeks after being home, not even 2 weeks, maybe a week and a half later, I'm pregnant. I go back to my doctor. He's like, oh, that's what happened. Okay, so here's what we need to do, right? And then immediately hyperemesis gravidarum, polyhydramnios, gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, HELP syndrome, eclampsia, just like all the stuff like during during pregnancy, during delivery, and then after. Right. And I said, it was me. It was my body failed. I mean, just all of that, right? That I think you won't understand unless you've been through it. And so it's one of those things that sort of like shifted my path as well, where I said, I never imagined that I would be talking on a platform this large, right? Or doing a podcast or helping parents with, systems and organizing things so they have more time to do exactly what we're talking about in terms of advocacy. So yeah, I love that you said, this is in me, so I'm going to do it. I'm entrepreneurial. I have the experience. I get it. Let's go. So in the journey, like what gaps do you see for parents of neurodiverse children, and what made you say, like, what made you choose what lane you were going to be in?
Yeah, it was different. That was a great question, and I'm really still in the thick of it, if I'm being completely transparent, because I've had started embracing neurodiversity. I'm looking at my calendar to see, and I remember it was 11/11/2022, which I did not. I would looked at my LLC registration. I did not make that connection till then. But anyway, so it's been almost 3 years. So still new and budding, but I had to go through different iterations, and I decided to focus first on parents because of much of what you mentioned. But I'm finding that parents enter this journey at different levels of it, right? So I have this framework called Discovery, Acceptance, Embracing, because even in reflecting back on my own experience, what I learned was that there are phases to this. And sometimes even that discovery, acceptance, and embracing phase happens in one day. Sometimes it happens in 10 years, depending on the thing that you are focusing on with your child. And so every parent is at a different phase as it relates to that. And so I engage with parents based on where they are. But one of the things I knew to be true for sure was that it's going to be hard to not only survive, because the goal is not to survive, it is to thrive. But even it's difficult to survive on this journey of parenting a child who is autistic if you don't have a mindset shift. It's just not, it cannot. If you can continue to compare your child, you are going to burn yourself out, and it's going to have an impact on your child. If you continue to think that it's your fault, which is supernatural, and I can relate, because I also went down the thinking about every detail of my pregnancy and every detail after my pregnancy to think, what did I do? And let's not even talk about what's happening right now with this Tylenol thing.
Yes.
Conscious. Yeah. But to your point, I understand. I don't want to get political on your platform, but the thing is how the impact that this has on parents around. Like, if you think that it's your fault, that impacts how you engage with your child, which impacts how your child feels about themselves, which does also impact their growth. And I know that as someone who has educated hundreds of kids, and even before I was a parent, I used to study and pay attention to different kids in my classroom and how they showed up. Despite their academic level, the kids who were more confident, who were, I hate to say, well-behaved is not the word I want to use, but who were confident and who were respectful and who engaged in learning, and they didn't have too much trauma on them, I guess you could say. For the parents, those students had parents who were not only involved, but they had a healthy sense of their child. They were advocates for their child, but they also, held their child accountable, and so I saw that and I was like, there's a thing here where a parent who has is not trying to push their child to be anything that they're not, but instead wants their child to just be the best version of themselves and engages with them in a healthy way. Those children, and these were teenagers, but it's a difference. I've seen it year after year. So I just knew, even the kids who were autistic, I've taught kids who were autistic, very quiet in the classroom, and we have to keep saying they were very smart because people think that autism means not smart. Some of my smartest kids were the kids who were autistic. They always got their work done. And so, but even those kids, it was because that I remember that their parents or some sort of caregiver was like locking step with them. But the kids who had learning differences and or disabilities, who had friction or challenges, or who had parents who unfortunately abandoned them, because that also is a high rate for our kids who have learning differences and who have other disabilities, that they experience abandonment. Those kids struggled more. So I came to the conclusion in my, what do we want to call it, qualitative analysis, that it was less about the child's ability and more about how the adults in their lives treated them. So then I was like, we need to support the adults in their lives, because if the adults in their lives have a healthy sense of themselves, and then as a result, a healthy sense of the children will be okay. It's a simple concept, but it's very hard for people to internalize. So that's my long way of saying, like, I can only work with parents who have identified that I need to unpack some things in order, you have to have that foundational understanding. If you are in denial or resistant, it's going to be hard for me to work with you right now. Because you have to, at the base level, want to unlearn some things. So
I remember in the diagnosis phase, or like advocating for diagnosis, my only goal was for me to get support, because I said there's obviously things I don't know in parenting, right? I've had nieces and nephews and I've seen them grow up through the toddler stages, but I didn't have them full time. And they also weren't exactly the same as my child, right? And then I was a teacher. Well, I taught 10-year-olds. And so again, I literally went to the doctor and I'm like, I am likely just like not doing something. So I'd like to get him evaluated. And then I want to make sure that I get the support that I need so I can be a better mom to him. That was really my goal. I literally was like, there's just something I don't know. And I obviously don't have time to learn it. If you tell me what's going on, right, like, then I'm open to learning. Of course, we got the diagnosis and I'm still on a learning path. I mean, I was looking at the papers this morning, his re-evaluation for speech therapy. And, you look at extra diagnoses that have been added, or, progress, or where he's at. They kind of put it in years. Like, okay, so he's almost 4 years old, but speech and things are at 1 year and 2 months.
Yeah.
And, you're just like,
yes.
But you have to fall back on, I think, a lot of the things that you're talking about is this mindset shift and I want to be the best version of me to help him be the best version of himself. And I do, as a former educator and really as a person who worked in recruitment and onboarding and like HR, that translates all the way through someone's life. You can tell the ways in which people show up, like, as you learn more about them, based on the confidence instilled in them by their parents. And that doesn't mean that they're not nice people.
Right.
A lot of them are very empathetic, very sympathetic, very understanding. They understand, like, how to have a conversation and how to not make assumptions. They know what their strengths are. They know how to ask for help. These are people who, like, end up really thriving somewhere, right? And that's ultimately what I want for my son. I also don't want to assume, right, that he's going to need long-term care, that he'll never talk. He's never going to eat more than 5 things. He's always going to sleep in the bed with me. I don't even want to put limitations on him like that, because I know what he's capable of. The boy ate bacon yesterday with his dad. He came home and he looked at me like, what is bacon?
Right.
Okay. We're back. Okay. He looked at me like, what is bacon? But I knew he was. I'm like, I know that your dad is able to get you to do things in some way that, like, mom can't. And I'm good with that as well. But, yeah, I just love that it's, I just really resonate with the fact that it's me. Like, what if I'm getting the support that I need, it will trickle down to him. I'm working a lot on like my reactions to things when he is very sensory seeking. The mouthing and chewing and biting on things. We had a whole like poop smearing stage where it was like, oh, that was interesting. I like the texture of it, but I don't like anything else about it. So get it off of me, right? And is likely the reaction he was having, except get it off me meant couch, toys, chair,
Yeah.
wall.
Yep.
You're like, right? Like I wasn't prepared for this, right? Or it just so me. Sometimes it's throwing things, and it's not. He's never intending to hurt anyone.
Right.
For him, it's I'm done with that. I don't really know the appropriate way. Like, kids don't know the appropriate way to do anything until you teach them.
Yes.
And yet, with my toddler on the spectrum who also has ADHD, sensory processing disorder, there are other layers of things in there that cause him to react how he does. And so it's reminding myself, like, I can handle it, but when we're around other people, they don't know all those layers.
Yes.
So we get around family or whatever. He's bad. No. No, my children are not bad. My daughter's sassy, and she's a leader. She's going to tell you about yourself, right? But bad? No. They're toddlers. They have not learned any of this, right? And so I think that part, even like with parents, you have to remember too, like, give yourself grace, because the grace will trickle down to your child, It will. My son was like, when he's tired, we all know when a child in general is overly tired, or even you as a person. If you're exhausted, one little thing, your hands being ashy, somebody driving too slow for a second, the lights flicking on and off, it sends you over the edge, right?
Yes.
So imagine a child who doesn't have the language to tell you, who doesn't know why he's always felt everything so deeply. And then I can't talk to these humans because they don't get it. They don't get it. They're like, easily amused. They seem to be doing okay. And I'm tired. I'm falling out. Binge out, drag out, like meltdown. I can't touch you like you want me to touch you.
Yeah.
Too much. There's all of that I think is so important for like parents and, maybe even moms specifically, but dads for sure too. Like, for parents to understand that's everything that's going on. And when you have a lot more empathy for your child.
Yes.
And then you can show up as a better advocate, because now I can go to school and say, hey, he throws something, he's never intending to hurt anybody. Like, he is, if you are harming him or about to harm him, he's more likely to bail. Like, when another child used to approach and they just wanted to parallel play, he throws the toys down, he leaves, right? If there is throwing, so I can guarantee you something else is going on. He's hot, he's cold, he's hungry, he's got to poop, he's got to pee, he's tired, something, right? Yes. You can show up better, and I can help him cope better.
Yes.
Long story in detail, but I'm like, I want people to because you understand exactly what I'm saying. I'm like, I want other people who are listening, whether you have a child who's neurodivergent or on the spectrum or not, the layers of things that you sort of come to understand when you're willing, right? When you're open and when you have the support to say what's actually going on here, what is likely going on with this child, and then like, what did that trigger in me? I couldn't have done that. I maybe did as a child, right? But what did you learn? We don't have meltdowns. You don't really have feelings. Children are to be seen and not heard, and a lot of times I don't want to see you either. And a lot of that came from protection, right? Like, I got to keep you safe.
Yes.
In the 80s and the 90s where at least where I grew up, we really had to protect children. We still do now. It's different, right? There's a lot more that we are protecting them from, but still back then, right, that was about protection. So imagine having a child who you're raising to be free. Like, I want you to be free, like within boundaries. I want you to be safe or whatever, and you're on the spectrum.
Yeah. I mean, it's terrifying in a way that is incredibly hard to explain, and for folks to understand. But I also want to name even the practices that we implemented and have learned to parent towards to keep our kids safe were not keeping our kids safe. They were keeping our kids confined, even metaphorically, right? Especially in terms of like what they are able and capable of doing. And so even when I talk about parenting children who are autistic and being mindful of all of those like levels of barriers that you mentioned, I also, just for parents in general, I talk a lot about this idea of conscious parenting, and it's just essentially like not projecting your own fears upon your child because you think it's protecting, but it really is keeping them confined. Because history has shown us even as much protection as you can do and guidance, even for a neurotypical child, we live in a world, especially if you are from a marginalized group, where there's only so much protection you can do. You could be at church and still get harmed, right?
Yes.
You could be at the grocery store, you could be running, going on a jog. And I try to keep that into perspective as well. Although it's incredibly terrifying because the chances of our children being harmed is more so because of their vulnerabilities with their speech and with how they show up socially. To your point earlier around not thinking too far in the future, in order to keep myself sane, I don't allow all of those things that are real, those threats, to consume me. Like, of course, I think about it because I want to be mindful and I want to keep guards up as they develop. But I can't allow it to consume me because, in a lot of ways, that messaging is designed to keep us in fear. And so there's this balance between, and I talk about this on my podcast a lot, so I love hearing what you're saying because it's affirming that, we're having the right discussions. But I always say it's a balance between, like, you're in charge, but you're not in control. And how do you create space for your child to learn how to become independent, but also not too much where they, get harmed. And so you are right when you say not thinking too far in the future and celebrating all of those small wins because they matter. You don't know what your child will be, 10, 15 years from now. Don't count them out. Don't it's natural to think about, oh shoot, or am I gonna have, because that's the biggest question, am I gonna have to take care of my baby forever? I know that's what sometimes we think. The moment you have that thought process, two things for me is like, Ivory, you don't know what's gonna I tell myself, you don't know what's gonna happen in the future, so stop. And number two, if you do, that's okay too. But I'm not even going. I'm not. It's a work in progress. It's a constant work in progress. And the last thing I want to say, when I hear you talk about your child, like you speak about him positively, and you do a great job of articulating why his behaviors are showing up, and that is also really important for parents to do, right? A lot of you. I don't know if you may not be surprised because you do this work as well, but a lot of parents, how they speak about their kids to the teachers, to the doctors, to the therapists is in a deficit mindset, and that has an impact. Because if you tell a teacher who doesn't know your child, oh, he's bad, or like his behavior isn't, it's hard to keep him in control or whatever, because I've heard some like really horrible things, your teacher is going to remember that, and then they sometimes will begin to respond to your child that way. So the way you speak about your child, even sometimes when you do feel like they're getting on my nerves today, speak about your child as positively as you can in public, because the stakes are high, and how people perceive your child is mostly going to be based on how you perceive your child, which is not easy work. But it's work that can be done with a community of people who you can unpack it with. So yes.
And it takes practice. I think you've got to say it to yourself. You got to look at yourself in the mirror and say it, and then you need to say it to your family. You need to say it to their siblings, to their other parents. Like, it's that, because me and his father are not together, but I had gone through the looking far into the future thing. I'd already done it. His dad, it took a year. Literally, I think he's recently come out of it. So like for over a year, he's like, I'm a black man, I'm raising a black son. And at some point, he's not going to be cute anymore. No one, the world's not going to care that he has autism. They're going to look at him as a black man, and I've got to protect him. And for a long time, I said, yeah, but he's 2, he's 3. And then I got to the point where I was like, you know what? He's right. And I don't know exactly how that feels because I've never been a black boy. I've never been a black man. I don't know exactly what that feels like. And so I can even have empathy for what dad is saying and why he is interacting with our son the way that he is. And it wasn't harsh. It was like, I'm raising the bar for you even more. Because he's like, Dom, I know you're a nurturer. Like, you take care of people. And he's like, I'm not saying that you're not having, boundaries and high expectations for him. What I'm saying is I have got to help reinforce those. He wasn't wrong. We've seen more growth out of him, like with that partnership. Um, because now my son is learning what I do at ABA therapy and speech therapy, like all these different places. The expectations are the same for me. Now, when he gets somewhere where he can play you, that's typical toddler. Typical child, that's probably typical person. If I could if I can wiggle my way into not doing something, and I think he knows when someone doesn't have high expectations of him, he'll do whatever. That's any child.
100%. Oh, for sure.
So
yes. And also, I wanted to touch on the village piece because I 100% agree with that in terms of, like every child, they need to experience adults in their lives first, obviously loving them unconditionally, but teaching them different ways of being and different approaches, because that's life in general.
Yeah.
So yes, you're the nurturer. I'm also a nurturer. But I have a family of who are like, there's some people who are a little bit more strict with Khalil and has a very much more like routine, like you're going to do this. And with love, they do that, and he responds well. And so, and, so I'm always thinking of, because it weighs on me too. My son is 8 now, and he is not always going to be the cute kid that people are like, oh, Khalil. I'm very clear about that. And so how do we still honor all of their emotions, but move them along to be able to navigate a world that's not always going to be gracious to them, but it is about putting people in their lives who, again, love them unconditionally, but will push them out of their comfort zone in a way that's important. There are times I'm not able to do it because I'm his mother and there's this emotional attachment and I'm still navigating. So I need other people in my village who I trust to do that for me. And so I'm saying that aloud for other parents who we don't trust people with our kids, and that is important. But it is, if you can identify 2 to 3, I always like to say like 5 people in their lives, yourself included, who play different but important roles, that is going to be so important for you on this journey and for your child, because they need something to help. And that's not something that every person has. I totally get that, because this is also a very isolating experience sometimes. But community is going to be key as well.
Community is good for you and it's good for the child. Like it really, really is. I mean, even seeing my 2-year-old interact with my son, so she's 11 months younger than him, and she's picked up on his needs. So she will hand him his shoe. I don't know why she has that accent. It's definitely Texas, but she sounds like she's from the East Coast. But she'll hand him his cup. Don't cry. It's okay. So she is nurturing because she realized he needs that, and at the same time teaching her there are things that you're very interested in and that's cool, but he needs that. Like you actually don't need this like oral stimulator thing that I got him, right, so he can get used to brushing his teeth and whatever. You actually don't do that. You brush your teeth by yourself. Right? He needs that, and I have to repeat that. So now she's like, oh, so now I say give that back to him. He needs that. She takes it to him, right? Or she realizes his cup is his comfort. Sometimes you're thirsty and you can identify that you're thirsty. Sometimes he wants to press it right here because it comforts him, right? And so he might take a sip, but sometimes he just wants to hold it. So narrating that for him. Same with my family. Like they're like, I want to help you with him. I want to watch him. I can try. And I'm like, you can do. You will be fine, right? Like you can do it. You are going to have to pick everything up, because he's going to find it. The best eyesight I've ever seen. Okay? Like magnifying glass eyes. I've never seen it. I don't know how he came from me able to see like that. I'm like, how did you see that? Where did that come from? But I'm like, you're going to have to watch him like any other child, but he will conform, like he will adjust to whatever your expectations are, and we've all got to keep them high. You're in your own unique way, you're going to do it. Like I watch how they are with their Nana. I'm like, they're in bed already? 8 when I'm out of town for work, or 8 and they slept all night? She's like, yeah, because I come home and she's literally, when she's telling me what she did, I'm like, that's literally what I do every day.
I know.
I sleep a whole hour before. There's something about the way,
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's okay. Same thing with Dad. I'm like, he sleeps by himself over there? He's like, yeah. He don't sleep by himself over here. He might start that way. In 2 hours, he's wiggled his way
Oh yeah.
up under my arm, right? And so
Younger, I'm embarrassed to say Khalil still has the same issue, but it's me. I need to like I need to get better with that. But yes, that's I yeah, no, 100%.
yeah,
100%.
but you need that community for sure, parents. So I know, like you were saying, it is hard to trust. Sometimes it can be isolating, but I think if there are people out there who understand, who are willing to support. Start with your friends, start with people you know, and if you really don't have anyone, like start building community with other people, like you know, and feel them out. If you wouldn't trust them with your life, don't let them around your kids, right? Like, but if
Yeah.
you feel like this is a good friendship, hey, I've met some people who were coworkers turned friends, and they're excellent, right? Like,
Listen.
one of them is my son's godfather.
And and I try to pay it how I know who to trust. Because before I moved back home, I was in Chicago. I didn't have immediate family, so my friends were my family to support us. And always, one of the things I choose the people I want to be around myself and my son is how they talk about other people. Even prior, like before, someone even knows that I am a mom of a child who is autistic. I listen to how people talk about other people and about the world around them in general, because if you're not speaking in a way that shows that you have empathy for anybody, you certainly are not gonna,
Yeah.
that's not a skill set that you have. Like, so the way that you talk about people is in particularly how you talk about kids and just in general, like just having those sensitivities and that awareness. And so it's not personal. I don't judge folks because people are in different places in their lives. But I'm just like, oh, well, if you think that, then my lifestyle and my world and my child, we're not for you.
Yep.
So that's my number one indicator. Is like, how are you talking about other people and things around you? But I also like, it feels like, because I give a lot of like, you should do this, you should do that, and it can feel overwhelming for parents, for moms, and I particularly have a soft spot for single moms on this journey, because you're like, okay, I gotta do another thing. Like, y'all, already this is a lot. So one of the things I just always remind, if you don't do anything else, just try not to do any harm. So
Yes.
when your child is having a meltdown, if you're like, oh, I don't know what to do, or like your child just, I don't know, did something completely outrageous in your initial reaction, because we've been taught to or conditioned to like yell or to hit or to chastise, like pause. And if you don't know how to do anything else, at least choose not to react in the ways that we initially will want to react, right? And I know that it's hard, but it's important to, at minimum, do nothing. And I know that because sometimes I'm like, okay, I don't know what to do right now, so I'm just gonna sit here and wait for this to be, for him to go through his emotions. Or like when you're just tired and they're refusing to go to bed. Like it's I just try my best to not add to the stress and anxiety. And it looks passive, but it actually is the most radical thing you can do, is not project your anger, your rage, your frustration, which are all real and valid, not to project it upon your child. Like go to the bathroom, lock the door, turn the water faucet on and scream, go to your room, scream in your pillow. But do all the things, and crying is okay and essential, actually.
Yes.
But try not to, do your best not to project it upon your child. You gotta go to another room and do it. And if you don't do anything else, do no harm. Try not to add harm. Because everything else is learning. And so yeah.
It's
And
funny because I've done those things. I let my child have the meltdown in the middle of the store
okay.
because I said I don't know what else to do,
Yeah.
and I think me touching him, trying to chase him, whatever, is actually making it worse.
Right.
It
Yeah.
lasted about 20 seconds. It feels like 20 hours.
It does.
But it was all of 20 seconds, and
Exactly.
he was able to like take his own deep breath.
Yes.
Lock eyes with me, and then he wanted to be held. Now I'm pushing a grocery cart full of groceries and holding this like 40-pound child, doing nothing, and me saying like, I am actually probably doing more. I'm making this worse. Like everything I'm trying is actually making it worse.
Yes.
I was dealing with shame and fear about what other people would have thought about me, and then I realized none of that actually matters. I don't know these people. What actually? I take a breath, Dom. What matters to you right now? That he is safe. Is he safe? Yes. Is he destroying anything in this store? Not even close. Take a breath.
Yes.
By the time I was done taking 3 deep breaths, he had taken 3 deep breaths. He's looking at me, my arms out. He runs into him, and here we go, right? And sometimes you think that that won't work. I know I've been there. I'm like, that's not gonna do it. That's crazy. I need to actively be doing something else. But I think you just reiterated some of the most radical things you can do in being conscious and being mindful. Your kids just model that. They model what they see you doing. You know, so even your children with autism, right?
Yes.
And just remembering all I was trying to explain to my mom, like what happened when we went in that store. And she's like, but I don't understand. Like, it wasn't bright, it wasn't da 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 da. And I said, right, but you don't deeply feel all of your senses potentially in the way that he does. So I pointed out to her, the brights don't have to be light for them to be a problem. The lights in Walmart are kind of weird. And there's people moving all around, and they got music playing. They keep making announcements. The temperature is different as we're moving. Like, it changes very quickly. Right in the store, there's different smells. We went from the fruit and the produce section and flowers to over to the meat really quick, and then there's rotisserie chickens and fish and right like and then very quickly it's cleaning products. And she's like, but I didn't notice any of that. Yeah, because you're used to it. You've been going to the store since the 60s.
Yes, we can't.
He's been going to the store since 2020.
Right.
2021 when he was born. Well, he wasn't even in there that year. We didn't go there. So he's got 2 years of being in the grocery store, not even consistently, you know. And so I try to point that out. And I'm like, I know for her, it's like, whatever. These might feel like excuses. But I'm like, no, they're his literal experience.
Yes.
And I don't think you'll get it unless you're a person. You won't fully get it unless you also feel similarly. And I do feel similarly about certain things. Things really do bother me, right? But I think highlighting and narrating that for people helps too. Because then they might start, like, the more and more you say it and they get to see it as they build community, the more they'll start to understand, like, well, you know what? Yeah, that kind of makes sense. You bring other people back into the present too. Because now my mom goes into the grocery store. She's like, you know what? Remember that time you said you had a meltdown? I did really get cold over here super fast. Yeah. I did smell the difference between, yeah, that's kind of crazy. Like, then you start thinking, like, yeah, that's kind of crazy. Why is the store set up like that? You know?
I do know. And I also believe that our children are here in a lot of ways to hold a mirror up to mainstream society, neurotypical folks. None of us are really neurotypical, but that's a whole nother conversation because to your point, you know, I have anxiety, and sometimes when I'm in public settings, I have my sensory is triggered by certain things. And I think most of us have sensory triggers, but we have been conditioned to ignore it so that we can conform to society, right? Our babies don't ignore, they just, I don't want to say they're incapable, but it's not in their makeup to ignore their sensory needs, right? And so a lot of times what it does, to your point, because I also have to explain to my family, because, you know, sometimes I'll ask why he had, and I'm like, well, I can't, it could be a myriad of things I don't know in this moment. But I've learned and have observed that when they are hyper aware of what's going on with Khalil, they always come back and be like, I think I also be having that issue too. Or now I can understand. And I'm like, yeah, we all do. It's just that, you know, that's why it's a spectrum. Some of us, you know, deal with a little bit more extreme. So in a lot of ways, we hold and I'm using this loosely, but we hold as parents the burden because the society around us it's not set up for our children's needs. So we hold the burden / responsibility of explaining it. However, in a lot of ways, it really does create clarity for folks who would not otherwise understand this world. And so in that way, I take solace in that. I'm like, Khalil engages, I'm with people that he doesn't even know, and his light just sort of like shifts their perspective. Yeah. So, you know, if not for nothing, like, our kids serve that purpose for sure.
This just made me think of another question that I didn't send to you in advance, but I just thought about it.
Yeah.
When we talk about autism spectrum disorder, I have to remind people a lot that it is a spectrum. Mm-hmm. And people say, well, they don't look autistic. Well, I don't know what looking autistic looks like. Hold on, a conversation for another day. I'll probably have to do a rant style podcast on that. Right. But I want to talk about children who may be level 1 autistic. Yeah. Where they don't have some of the sensory seeking, like just the overtly, right? Like things that you might really pick up on with my child or maybe even your child. What have you seen as being missed with them, and what can we do for them? You know, not just children, but the adults, right? Like, just with
Yeah,
your
that's
experience.
a great question. And I think about that often because it's case by case scenario because I saw this image one. I'm going to answer your question, but I kind of want to go back because this image just popped in my head where like when we think about spectrum, we think linear, but really it's both horizontal and vertical, right?
Yeah.
So just despite what level you are, your strengths and your areas of growth may vary because parents, it's just like a fingerprint. Every child's profile is going to be uniquely different. But to your point, most things show up in behaviors and not necessarily like attention seeking, but but in the communication style, they're all children, but children who like their symptoms show up less prevalent, it'll show up more so in their behaviors and in the way that they choose to communicate. But the other piece too is parents, and I say this a lot on my podcast too, is that the art of observation is going to be key. And so oftentimes objective observation too, not you like looking for a particular behavior, but you're observing to learn because your kids are always going to tell you. They're always going to tell you what they need. They're always going to tell you what they feel. But you have to take off that lens of like what you would prefer for them to be doing or what the expectation is and truly look at and observe them from a clean slate. Especially when they don't think you're paying attention and they are regulated, observe them. Just, if they're in the room quiet, if they're over somewhere, you can see them from that vantage point. Pay close attention to, the things that keep them that they are interested in, keep them regulated, the things that dysregulate them, the things that trigger them, the things that, but to your point, if it's not showing up immediately, what their sensory triggers are, if it'll show up mildly if you pay attention. You have to really be super observant. And as parents, we get busy, we get distracted, we want to do the chores, we want our kids to do the thing we need them to do so we can get through this day. But actually, parenting is truly staying alert and present as much as you possibly can in the day with your kids, despite what a diagnosis or not, and reacting to what is happening in the moment as opposed to trying to control the narrative or the process or how they show up. So I say all that to say, like, be incredibly observant of your child in the most non-objective way. You're entering as a learner because they're going to teach.
Yes.
So that's first. Start there and just be like, jot it down if you need to. Make a mental note, write it down, and then go back and reflect. Okay, I'm seeing this. This is why coaching is important because usually if I'm working with a parent, I always ask my parents to at the beginning of the session, like, tell me some good things or some things or some celebratory wins for yourself and your child, because that also gives the skill of observation. Like now we're holding them accountable to like, what are you seeing? But yeah, so I make that point of like when you're doing your observation, you're seeing things, to then unpack it with someone that you trust so that you can start to like, I know you do this well and you talked about this. You can build out a routine that works for you and your child, but the routine has to work. And the only way the routine works is if you observe what they need. And so it sounds like it's not a quick fix, but this is not going to be a quick fix. So that's my first, like, observe, write it down, unpack it with someone you trust, and come up with a strategy based on your observations that is going to work for you and your child. That's the key. And that's an ongoing process because sometimes one thing will work for a couple of weeks that is not going to work the next week. But stay in a place of observation always, objectively as you can.
And I think it really is intuitive. Like, it sounds complex because we have to break it down, but it really is intuitive. Like, moms, you do a great job of figuring out what the difference between those cries are when your child is born. Like, somebody else is like, oh, they need a bottle, and you're like, nope, they pooped. Like, or nope, they're really tired, or nope, that sounds like pain. Let me check and see if they have a fever, or like moms figure that out in like weeks.
Oh, for
Baby's
sure.
not even 1 month old and you figured it out. It's the same skill set,
Yeah.
right, as they get older. And I think about as a child, as I learned, I got like an autism diagnosis when I was like 30, I don't remember how old I was, 33, 34. And it was just like, yeah, I think I'm going to write down you're on the spectrum. Like, it didn't matter what level at that point because I had other needs. But it was like, psychiatrist putting that down. And I'm like, huh? And so I went to learn about it, and I wasn't a mom yet either. So I'm like actually grateful that I dove in. But I started to have almost flashbacks of the amount of times that I was having these reactions, right, to sensory stuff in the environment that no one picked up on. Certain textures of foods I did not eat and I won't eat. Way in which foods have to be balanced on my plate. Like, fine, you say I have to eat these foods, that okay. Everything can't be soft and mushy. I don't want it, right? I had the most visceral reaction to people chewing and popping gum, particularly if I can hear the sound and I can smell the gum. And it's not like a pet peeve. That's how I used to describe it. What's your pet peeve? No, I'm if you were to look at me, I tense up. I start tapping. I'm like trying to find something to do with my hands, my feet. I'm doing everything I can to try to overload the other senses so I don't pick up on that. This is all observable. Like, if you actually stopped and just sort of observed me, you would have picked up on it. Now, I can't tell you that you can't chew gum and pop gum around me. Like, I would prefer that it doesn't happen, but I also understand I can't tell you what to do. I don't know why you need it, right? But understand that still at the big age of 40, the exact same thing happens. Automatic, right? That's that. I'm not going to eat pot roast and mashed potatoes, and it's too much mushy stuff on the plate. Please don't tell me, oh, you just haven't tried mine. I promise you, I'm not going to eat it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it can't be a shift from too cold or too hot in an environment, right? There are so many things. I can pick up on, like, really subtle. I can sense when people's mood has changed in a room the moment I walk into it. I'm like, something happened in here. I can feel it, right? So I'm walked in, I feel like my hair would probably like stand up, right? But if you watch, you can see it. I watch my daughter, who is neurotypical as far as I can tell at this point. I watch how she plays, and then I know how she moves when she's not feeling well. It's not the same. And then my son, same thing. I can tell something just shifted. I don't know exactly what it is yet. Let me just watch. And that's how we picked up on, he walks over there as we're trying to potty train him. He walks over there and he stands there because he's about to poop. Let me take you to the bathroom, right? Or now he's learning to be potty trained. He starts to scream because he's trying to hold his pee because the expectation is to go on the potty. I'm very uncomfortable. I'm very uncomfortable right now because I'm trying to hold the pee and I can't tell you that I gotta pee. Even though you could just go. You could just go and I'm gonna follow you, right? But you know what I mean? Like, it's very observable when you watch it. It's that we're sharing a lot of this on the Parent Porch Podcast right now because we have a mindful parenting ebook that talks about getting back in the present. Like, we are so distracted with a lot of the things that are loosely connected to parenting or just like your everyday life. We've got TV and sports and apps and kids' activities and school and the paperwork and the therapies and our job and entrepreneurship and social media content creation and how to read this blog. I got to have as much information as possible. I got to keep up with politics and world events. You're so distracted that you miss very key moments. You'll say, I don't have a win this week. You miss them all, right? You miss when you're, formerly non-speaking child who still may be struggling with that, right, said something else. Like, I heard my son say his name yesterday.
Doesn't it just make your heart hurt? And I'm like, y'all, please, let's celebrate this.
Yeah.
There are parents who are waiting for moments like that, and not to compare in general, but just like, it's always something. So, and the key word I also want to say is the observing from an objective place, because if you observe from a place of still looking for what you want, you're gonna miss, all the things that your child
is happening.
So
the steps, my son was able to climb the steps when he started playing with toys appropriately. When he didn't, people were like, you should give him a tablet. That might really help him. He looked at me like, what is this?
For
a long time, not interested. And then suddenly he observed other people and how they used it. Then he became interested and now he can navigate it. Right now we can prepare you for an AAC device because of all those little wins. But what's brilliant about this child, not being able to spell or anything, he will find super simple songs, videos to communicate to me what he wants. He's found a bath video. Are you hungry? When he's hungry. And there's one more. I can't remember the other thing. I think they're talking about weather or something like that to communicate that he wants to go outside. I have to be listening to that because he will play it on repeat. And sometimes he'll look at me like, oh, you're not getting it, so I'm gonna just go to the door, right? Or I'm gonna start taking my shirt off because I'm trying to tell you, lady, I need to get in the bath, right?
That's why I was gonna say it's gonna show in those behaviors for sure, and they will escalate if you keep ignoring.
Yes, he's like, okay, that's fine, all right. Let me figure out how to make this even more clear to you, right? But this is all observable. It really is, and some of it, it's not a quick fix. Some of it you need support in. A lot of it you might need support in, right? And like, I love that you said today I may have like found a solution, but then you got to remember this is a whole human being who's constantly developing. I had to learn about like hormones with boys because I'm like, is it ADHD or is it that like he's 2 and between 2 and 4 testosterone is really high in boys and that makes them active? I won't know if he truly has ADHD until likely somewhere after age 4, close to age 5 or 6, because the testosterone starts to drop after they turn 4, right? So like you can leave it on the paper, that's cool.
Yeah.
But I might ask you to remove it if we find out that really, no, it's just testosterone, right? Like there's a lot of different things, that happen. And you do like, you want to pay attention to it. You want to know what those moments are. And you want to, I would say, not overload yourself with information, but like being armed with information really helps on this journey. And giving your child the grace to grow. And you, like, not only is your child continuing to develop, so are you. Just because you're an adult doesn't mean we stop evolving and learning and developing. There's still stuff happening with us too, so.
And I do want to say one last thing about the diagnosis piece, because I know we're probably going to have time. It's an incredible conversation, but even with like when you ask about the level 1 and children, and when you talk about your child who may or may not be ADHD, I also tell parents, and when I'm advocating and speaking, that the diagnosis, because I've had parents who observe their child and see symptoms, but their child doesn't have a diagnosis, so they're like, should I get a diagnosis? Is what a question that I get asked often. And first of all, I'm not a healthcare provider. I'm not a pediatrician, so I don't go into that route. But what I do say is that a diagnosis is there for you to be able to get the therapies that you need for your child and for your medical, your Medicaid or your Medicare to pay for the recovery, right?
Yep.
However, if let's say your child is this high function, I don't tend to use, but I give that for people who can understand it. You see some signs, but for the most part, your child shows up. If you want to create strategies, when you observe a behavior, you want to create strategies that will help them to regulate. You want to be able to have tools when you see or you want to support if they don't want to eat that food, or you see they're getting overstimulated. You want to have tools in place. You don't need a diagnosis for that. Right. What you will need is to stay present, to be observant, to listen, and then to talk to people who are experts in this field. A diagnosis is fine and it's helpful, but a lot of people are concerned about the labels and the stigma that's attached to it. It's not about the stigmas, it's about the support. So that is the goal. With or without a diagnosis, you're still going to need to put strategies in place if you have a child who has sensory needs, who has speech delay, who is hyperactive. And this is outside of, getting official autism diagnosis. Like, kids show up in the world different and you need strategies. So I also want to name that because some people be feeling away about the diagnosis piece. And it's just like, that's the least of the problem. So
I center my child in my decisions. So it's not about stigma that I have to deal with. It is, how is my child going to feel if this diagnosis isn't anywhere? Because I'm thinking about myself more, right?
Yes.
If someone had diagnosed me with ADHD when I was a child, there's so much more support that I could have gotten. The accommodations that I actually needed for exams. The whole time I'm thinking I'm just a bad test taker. We know that I'm smart. I'm gifted and talented. But when it's time to get to a multiple choice test, like my brain can't slow down enough.
Wait a minute.
Yes, I needed more time. But you can't get accommodations
if you don't
without
have
a diagnosis a lot of times, right? Yeah. So how I was being handled was like, you just need to focus. And I'm like, right, I can't. It's not a lack of will. It's not even a lack of skill. This is like something biological, chemical going on here, right? So I think about I'm like, I needed the diagnosis so I could figure out how to better support him. I am open to removing it if, anything, right, that changes in his mind, like, anything that shifts, anything that maybe he grows out of, in quotes, right?
Right.
But I never wanted to get to a point where we act like my child never had autism.
Oh, for sure.
Or he never was hyperactive, or
Yeah,
because he needs that information in
girl.
his life as well, like for when he needs supports again. Especially because I know that I just recently learned this information in the last week about regressions,
Yeah.
where like development can like speed up, and there's all these things that people with autism can do, and then all of a sudden there's a regression. They
Yeah.
don't know it's happening, right?
Yeah.
But it happens.
Yeah.
And now I removed it because I was thinking about me. Like, whoo, finally, I don't have to deal with this anymore, right? And then where is he now? Where is he now with this information as an adult? Where now he's like, something happened. And let's say I'm not here anymore.
Right.
I'm not here. I'm not able to speak for him. I'm not able to advocate. I still want him to be armed with the information that he needs.
Yes.
So, whether he chooses to disclose it to people or not is his business, right? And whether we choose to disclose it to people is also our business, right?
Right.
Everybody doesn't have to know.
Yeah.
But you're right. You do need the services. And I think when you center the child or your children in their experiences and what's happening, it helps a lot. You realize how much of the thoughts that are behind the decisions you make are really just about you. You have made the whole thing about you,
Yes.
your triggers, and what you weren't able to do, what you weren't allowed to do.
Yeah.
Right? And that's stuff for you to work through. Don't ignore it. When that comes up, like definitely make note of it, because that's stuff you want to work through. But think about your child. Think about now what's available. Think about the information that's now out there, right? I can't hold it against my parents for not knowing what I was dealing with the whole time. They didn't know, right? They didn't know. It didn't show up the same way as my brother and all that kind of thing, right? I now know better, but I still got to work through it, So
Yeah, and removing the stigma around being autistic. You don't have to disclose it, but I remember feeling like when Chloe got the diagnosis, I want him to be able to, when he's an adult, to advocate for himself and say, I'm autistic.
Yes.
I need you to like do this differently for me, or like that's unclear.
Yes.
I want him to be upset, because there's nothing wrong with being autistic. You just have to have the tools to navigate. And so I'm always telling people whenever I get to know them that like my son is autistic, because I also want to normalize it. Like I want people to hear it so that they're able to be like, oh, okay. Like the more you hear it, the more it becomes normal. When we keep it private, it feels like a secret, because people like tell me like my child is too, and I'm like, and it's your right to like keep things, but in my mind I'm like, you feel some shame there, and that's okay, because we are on our journey. But I actually am an advocate for saying it aloud, because we need to make it normal. I mean, at this point, we're like 1 in 33. So society may be on the spectrum in 15 years from now. So
I love that. I love the saying it out loud, and I really love the teen and adult content creators who are autistic. I follow a lot of them, and their advocacy and the way they talk about their experience, to remind people that autistic people don't stay children.
Yes.
I think we got lost. Okay, we're back. But I was saying, I love seeing the teens and adults who are talking about their experience, because reminding us that like autism doesn't just stay in childhood, right? Like that is a part of who you are your entire life. And so we have to remember that. We do need more supports for children, and we need them for teens, young adults, elderly, like everyone needs additional supports. We have got to expand that access, but we also, in the same breath, we need people to know there's someone with autism or a neurodivergent sitting right next to you. And so how do you create an environment that is supportive and inclusive of them? Because you'll find out it's actually inclusive of you too. It actually ends up helping you.
Yes.
We found out how beneficial it was to allow people to work remotely, and while they're trying to roll back on it, it helped people with disabilities who have trouble getting around, trouble with transportation, can't drive, don't have the money, don't have the support, or people like me who it's too overstimulating in office. There's too much happening. I don't actually get my job done. At home, I get it done in a fraction of the time. I'm much more creative and innovative, right? Think about, like you can better control your environment at home if you've got autism.
Absolutely.
And there are certain things that you need. You can wear your weighted blanket on your body. Nobody will see it on camera, most likely.
I'm telling you, I always said that what we do for the most vulnerable of us in society, it supports all of us. Like it's,
Yes.
I mean, it just does. And so 100% when, and that's where we're fighting to get people to see and understand. So
Perfect. I think we could talk about this all day. We'll
for
probably
sure.
have to do a part two. I want you to leave parents with some quick advice. What are some advice? You've shared a lot of good nuggets, but what words of encouragement or practical advice would you offer today?
I want to reiterate the base level. If you don't know what to do nothing, right? Do no harm. And then, second, for moms, you did nothing wrong. And the moment that starts to rumble in your mind, do your best to immediately cut that thought off because we can go down the rabbit hole, right? So, like, you did nothing wrong. And if when that feeling comes up, because it will, stop it in your tracks and say, I did nothing wrong. And that's it for now.
That is excellent advice. Thank you so much, Ivory.
Thank
Everybody, make sure that you go and follow Embracing Neuro_Diversity. She has children's books. She
you.
has a playbook for parents. You can reach out to her for coaching and support. She's got a podcast. Just so many good nuggets and lots of storytelling. A really good conversation. I felt like seen and heard and understood, and I'm like, I have so much to share because I can relate. I hope that that is how it feels to our listeners. Thank you again to Pop for sponsoring this episode. Also, make sure that you like, subscribe, share. If you are a parent of a neurodiverse child or adult, you're still a parent, right? So that's still your child. Share this. Share this with family members or people who don't get it. Who could get some understanding. And we'll see you next time on the Parent Porch Podcast. Thank you for hanging out with us today.